Jacksonville, a child was born who couldn't sit still. 86 years later with no regret. You know that man can't sit still yet. The Great Depression couldn't get him down. He worked for his dad's store in town, collecting money in small amounts for poor whites and blacks in their furniture accounts. Stetson Kennedy wants us all to be free. Stetson Kennedy wants us all to be free. As he'd collect, he'd talk to folks. He'd hear legends, tales, songs, and jokes. Now this fine treasure he'd record and write. He was colorblind, didn't see black and white. Writer's project for the WPA. Zora Neale Hurston, he earned his pay. Crackers and blacks, they talk for hours. It was a barefoot history in this land of flowers.
The Weekman was on the 14th of April 2018 from WBRN Radio in Boston and on the Boston Red Network. I have a number of things to cover. First of all, we were looking at a number of sources, BBC, RT, Reuters. The strikes on Syria. Roughly 100 plus cruise missiles from various places were launched by France, the UK, and the US in a coalition there. And we hope to have a report, or perhaps we'll have a special one, a news conference from the Russian Defense Ministry. What we're going to do is spend a lot of time on this. It was the typical MO of the U.S. on a Friday night, low news coverage. The strikes came about in the night on some research facilities and in and around, and some other installations in and around the Syrian capital, and other facilities as a target map of those out there. But what has happened normally, and does happen, the so-called warning was given by DJ Trump. Days in advance. You can bet those facilities were evacuated. Any materials there had been taken away. The people had disappeared. They were empty. So in other words, the missiles targeted empty structures primarily. And we'll get that report, and we'll probably put into a special one from the Russian Defense Agency. But the pictures are starting to come in as we see what the attack was. Let me get the point of view here from Boston and the congressional delegation there. Massachusetts, all Democratic delegation swiftly criticized DJ Trump's announcement Friday night. He launched the missile attacks on Syria. Tonight, the U.S. military strikes on Syrian government targets is neither constitutional nor wise. That was from Senator Markey, who serves on the Foreign Relations Committee. Said in a statement, attacks as of this on another country without congressional authorization are unconstitutional. He's correct about that. They push the U.S. Closer to what could be an inimitable all-out conflict in Syria. And attacks, okay, we already got that one. Anyway, that was from Senator, that is from Ed Markey. Senator Markey. Senator Elizabeth Warren said on Twitter that the U.S. should be part of a planned, coordinated, unilateral effort to respond to the chemical attack. But she added the Constitution gives Congress the power to authorize a military action, and she's running for president incidentally. Wants to expand the military's involvement in Syria. He must seek approval from the Congress. Chemical attacks in Syria are horrifying and clearly a violation of international law. The world must hold the Assad accountable for this violence against the Syrian people. But there's really no proof that he has actually, or the Syrian government actually performed these. There is a front group, a so-called Syrian Medical Association, people have been talking about is a front for the State Department's AID operation there, which is not more than a CIA front. So this is what you get into. Representative Seth Moulton of Salem, a veteran of the Iraq War, said America should be asking what the country's strategy is in Syria. Anyone using chemical weapons should be stopped. This includes the Syrians and the Russians, but we've seen this before. We've tried this response before, and it has clearly failed. We need a strategy, I should say. Yesterday, I reminded Mad Dog Mathis that in Iraq, he gave us a clear mission and told us what we needed to accomplish to go home. Then I asked about Syria, and he said troops that can go home when they defeat ISIL. Representative McGovern, he's from Worcester, called upon the Speaker Ryan to let Congress debate the war authorization legislation, which they will not debate. The international community must hold Assad. And this is one of the troubling things here, accountable. Everybody's jumping on this bandwagon when the evidence is not there. Michael Capiano, also demanded that Ryan allow debate on the military authorization. Won't get that. Representative Joe Kennedy III said on Twitter, Assad must be held accountable for his horrific use of chemical weapons. The response of Bay State Congressman largely mirrored those of the minority leader Pelosi, who said that the chemical attacks demand a strong, smart, and calculated response. Well, that's what DJ Trump said also. And this is part of the problem that we have with the Wilsonian foreign policy. They fall in this trap that is laid by these various characters like the Syrian Medical Association without any proof at all. What we do have proof of is that these various chemical agents have been used in territory controlled by elements of ISIL and some of these Kurdish renegades. That we do know. Period. First of all, if you look at any type of logic of the situation, there was no reason for the Syrians to use any type of chemical weapons because, first of all, they were winning the conflict and the rebel forces were getting ready to surrender. This seems more of a sabotage of the process than anything else. And where did these come from? Well, the investigators are coming, but since these sites have been bombed, much of the evidence is now gone away, quite literally. And they were evacuated anyway. So this is, period, one of the things. Julian Amish, a Republican congressman from Michigan, called the strikes unconstitutional, illegal, and reckless. Well, he's right about that one. The next Speaker of the House must reclaim the congressional war powers as prescribed in Article 1 of the Constitution. This is by Miss Levin. Here. So anyway, we'll put this up on the social media feeds. Nonetheless, polls suggest majority of Americans back Mueller's investigation. Now, this is in Washington Post ABC poll. 7 in 10 adults, they say they supported Mr. Mueller. I wouldn't put a lot of stock in this because these kinds of polls, There have been others out also. The situation composed conducted Sunday to Wednesday with interviews overlapping of the action on Michael Cohen's office. But evidently the situation is Michael Cohen, he's the attorney, one of the many personal attorneys that DJ Trump has, was on investigation for other matters. Finds Americans view Comey includes division and indifference, with 3 in 10 seeing him favorable, just over 3 in 10 unfavorable. The rest have a no opinion. That's strange. 3/4 of the Democrats, unsurprisingly, approve of disapprove of Trump's firing of Comey, where 70% of the Republicans approve. And this is what we look at here. Half the independents disapprove of the action, and that's where some of, quote-unquote, the action is here. About half of the Democrats, 47%, are favorable towards Comey, while most of the 56% Republicans are unfavorable. That's the ex-FBI director, whose book is coming out. We'll have another separate program on that. We have a lot of separate things to do this weekend here, basically. Democrats are more united, with 8 in 10 expressing support for Mueller. Beyond the Mueller probe, 51% say the question of whether Trump engaged in a pattern of sexual misconduct is an important issue. I kind of doubt that, while 46% to say it is not. And that's a fairly close situation. The poll was conducted the 8th of April through the 11th of April, and 1,002 people landline, etc. Margin of error here is a 3.5, which throws everything into the air. Is basically the only thing you can say about this situation out here. While we're getting, While we're getting up the next story, homelessness, it's kind of more of a survey situation here. Homeless deaths surge, no doubt about that. Opiate addiction, and this is by Tim Craig, and in the Post on the 13th. Starts in Nashville. Desperate to avoid an early death, Michael Jenkins found a doctor willing to operate on his damaged liver. Jenkins knew all along that it was a recovery that was more likely to kill him. So a stent was put in there. He's 63 years old, and he was living in an abandoned car, what have you, in West Nashville. There I couldn't even move, and I was sore from head to toe, no doubt about that. Who once battled alcohol abuse, had cirrhosis of the liver. And he was definitely cold where he was living in this abandoned. Struggle to survive reflects a growing number in American cities across the country, in cities big and small. Hundreds of thousands of people who lack permanent shelter are facing elevated health risks as communities unsuccessfully search for solutions. And then they go to Denver here, where 231 homeless persons last year died, an increase of 35% over 2016. The president of the Colorado, Homeless Coalition for the Homeless, that was John Pravensky, in New Orleans, a record number of 60 homeless deaths last year, a 25% increase in 2 years. In Seattle, 169 homeless people died. That is a lot of people. Double the number of homeless deaths recorded in King County that is Seattle, 5 years ago. The trend is affecting cities large and small. They go into Rapid City, South Dakota, a city of roughly 74,000 people. They have seen 5 homeless people die there since December. The deaths correspond to a surge in homelessness across the U.S. last year for the first time In 7 years, the Department of Housing and Urban Development estimate a rise in the homeless population of roughly 500,000 people lacking a permanent shelter in 2017, directly affecting 1 in every 600 residents. A lot of people there, and these cruise missiles, the cost to them could solve the problem. And this is one of the problems with your priorities, particularly when you start dealing with military items that have no intrinsic value at all. In Nashville, where cash-strapped musicians once flocked to chase their dreams, the homeless population has grown as the economy has attracted robust healthcare and technology industry with about 80 new residents arriving every day. Rents that went from 800 in 2013 to $1,148 today. The figure jumps to $1,700 for apartments in the central city of Nashville. Based on overnight census, Nashville has 2,300 homeless people. Local advocates estimated at 20,000. That's a lot of people there. And housing is healthcare, so a lot of people are dying unnecessarily. That is from Ingrid McIntyre, a Methodist Passion Executive Director of Open Table Nashville. They documented 124 deaths there. And there's not been an issue there nationwide. Neither HUD nor Center for Disease Control and Prevention estimate how many homeless people die each year. But CDC issued a statement noting that 19 million Americans favors what they call now housing insufficiency, and 28 million without health insurance, a disgrace in a modern capitalist society. In the West, unsanitary conditions that led to a hepatitis outbreak in San Diego. So in other words, all these issues, many of them could be easily addressed. Arctic blasts that caught people, 8 homeless people died of hypothermia in Atlanta, Georgia in a 1-month span. The Atlanta Constitution reported in Oklahoma City, a house fire there killed 3 homeless people literally trying to stay warm, I suppose. That's one of the, you hear these increase in house fires in the Midwest area in the winter, particularly in structures that are poorly ventilated and poorly constructed. Nashville's homeless population has been crowding into 10 cities, sanctuaries, parking lots of vehicles and shopping centers. Once the sun sets, and encampments under I-24 near the Nissan Stadium on the banks of the Cumberland River, and only 24 tents rest in a soggy field that collects stormwater runoff. So in other words, that's one of the problems also is where the homeless can actually stay. After a recent night of heavy rainfall, a 32-year-old Scott Flackey emerged from his tent with a drenched sleeping bag. Said he became homeless about a year ago when his girlfriend concluded that they could not afford $300 a week to live in a budget hotel. I imagine not. That's $1,200 a month. So various things there. Some people living off of Social Security benefits from anywhere to $300 to $212 in food stamps. So roughly about $500. And I suppose they'd find a place to stay. Anyway, Jenkins is in the back of his van. He's the fellow with the medical problems. Heaps of plastic bags, suitcase, empty water bottles. He's not sure how long he can stay there before moving. So this is a man that had some surgery here. A few weeks ago, Jenkins was recovering from surgery. Somebody else here named James George showed up looking for a place to stay. George said he was a retired Army nuclear weapons specialist who previously worked for the Tennessee Valley Authority. Interesting collection of people. George recently became homeless after someone stole his truck. He receives $1,000 a month in Social Security benefits. So in other words, he has to save money to get another truck. 2, he was going to move out west and I suppose sleep in his truck someplace. So these are stories that are much more valuable than the stories we get of Kimberly Jin. She is a coroner in Sacramento County and said there are generally more deaths in the general population. Her office handled 500 more deaths last year. So this is from Sacramento, California to the Dakotas. So trying to get an accurate count is evidently one of the big things here, but obviously the government could do a lot more. As she walked through a row of donated headstones, this is at a charity cemetery in Nashville. McIntyre cites studies that estimate the average life expectancy in the homeless population is between 42 and 52 compared with 78 in the general population. Hopefully the story stimulated something. It's a lot of facts here out. And also, let's see, Mr. Gardner, Senator Cory Gardner from Colorado, has been in a fight with Beauregard Sessions. He's the Attorney General over cannabis. It's a big industry out there, and he has held up nominees for the Department of Justice, and now on a states' rights issue, they are going to support Colorado's industry here. So this kind of shows you where things are in terms of if enough capital is involved, it will be there. He said he received a commitment from the President that the Department of Justice would rescind, would be lifting my remaining holds. And they are evidently not going to touch Colorado's industry. Has held sharp different views from Sessions on the issue. During the presidential campaign, he said in an interview with KUSA TV that it's up to the states on the issue of cannabis. Well, Senator Hatch, Senator Harris of California wrote to Sessions this week urging him to back off efforts to curtail medical marijuana research at the Drug Enforcement Administration. John Boehner, we talked about this earlier, announced this week he's joining the board of directors for a cannabis company and engaging efforts to allow veterans to access marijuana for medical use. Let's do the sports now here. If we can find it. Here we go. So we go to Major League Baseball. Not a good day for the Cubs, nonetheless. The Atlanta was in a Wrigley Field, and they shut out the Cubs 4-0. Mr. Darvish was a loser. Darvish has had a tough spring and a tough early season here. The Cards and the Reds in Cincy. 5-3 Cardinals. The Rockies and Nationals in D.C. Rockies 2-1. The Orioles and Red Sox in Fenway Park. Sox 5-3 in that contest. The Blue Jays and Cleveland. Blue Jays 8-6. The Yankees and Tigers in Motor City. Yankees 8-6 there. Mr. Montgomery was the winner. Anyway. And the Brewers and the Mets 6-5. The Pirates and Marlins in Florida. Marlins 7-2. At least it was warm there. The Phillies and Rays also in Florida. Phillies 2-1 in that contest. And let me see. I think this ends our baseball. Well, no, it didn't. I'm sorry about that. The Rangers and Astros game that I tuned into. 3-2 Astros over the Rangers. The Angels and Royals in Kansas City. Angels 5-4. The D-backs and Dodgers, it was all D-backs, 8-7, high scoring game there. Dodgers had 11 hits and 1 error, and the D-backs 10 hits and no errors. The Athletics and Mariners in Seattle, Mariners 7-4. The Giants and Padres down in San Diego, where it was warm, 5-1, and because of rain, snow, whatever else, the White Sox and Twins were postponed. Very wise decision there. There was evidently some controversy by some of the Twins fans the other day for not playing in the snow. Anyway, the Flyers and Penguins. Flyers are 5-1 over our Penguins. The Wild and Jets, it was Jets 4-1. And the Kings and the Golden Knights of Las Vegas, 2-1. Golden Knights over the Kings, and that's the NFL. We'll start the playoffs tomorrow night in the National Basketball Association. And let me just make sure that I didn't miss anything here. I don't think we did. I think we pretty much got everything. It's a little bit shorter than normally there. We're updating our web pages, incidentally, also, and if you go to bostonred.org, you'll be able, over the weekend here, to find our programs, at least from iHeartMedia and several other sources, whether it be for our political program, Boston Red, or Numbers Man, the financial program. That'll be at 2 locations. It's on our analytics page for Cranston and also at Cranston.com, and we'll have it also at Boston Red. And for, let's see, with some of the other shows, the Open Source Report, of course, is on the Cranston site. And BR on the World, that'll be on the Boston red.org site. We're going to push those over there, and you'll at least be able to go to iHeartMedia and get those situations, period. From Facing South, interesting one here. Voice of Resistance using technology as a movement builder. The nation was attempting to focus on Facebook. We always get these. Rebecca Barber is the person here. Technology also has tremendous potential to serve as a tool for political liberation. That is from Alice Aguilar. And she's featured here. And if we can get the rest of it up here. Okay. These are usually fairly short. We recently spoke with Aguilar by phone. The Voice of Resistance series. Can you tell me about your background? Well, not too much. She graduated from college in 1984, so she's been around for a while. She worked at IBM. So after leaving IBM, I began teaching in college in New York. He moved to Alaska, which has a deep history in terms of indigenous people's rights. Through this work, I was learning about voter engagement campaigns. Back then, in the 90s, we were still doing things by paper, no doubt about that, in cards. Many groups still face the same issues. So at the Progressive Technological Project, really work on building capacities, organizations, and communities. And I began to work with in the Southwest with groups there. In the South, we know funding hasn't been great in terms of resource technology. The South has always been lacking, no doubt about that. That's why Progressive Technology Project has been an ongoing engagement and ongoing capacity building. It's important that we don't do the leading. It's important that groups do the groundwork. Now, this is interesting here. The Hollinger Research and Education Center, that is in Tennessee, can tell you about that gathering and lessons we learned then. Additional, we believe, deep in mentorship. And Highlander was Dr. King once went there. The movement was ripe for this type of conversing. I've been using several conversing around residential community responses. This is back to the Highlander Center. I didn't know how long this would be. I had previewed it. But anyway, the movement technology statement came out there. So this is one of the good things here. We'll do a little further research on this, and we'll put this up on a program. This is obviously going to require a little bit more than what we have here. It frightens me that social media tools are being used. I can't get this down here. I probably will put this on the open source report. Using facial recognition to identify people in photos and community participation because it's fun. This data is feeding a racially biased system, no doubt about that. And this is where they ended. But to watch out there as a woman of color, how do you think you have been able to use your position to break barriers of women of color? We are still not considered equal, no doubt about that, Mrs. Aguilar. Anyway, this is some of it here where it's going. This will do it for us. We'll see you on the Monday morning quarterback. Sorry about the stumbling here. We had hoped to get a report from the Russian Ministry of Defense. We'll have to put that on one more special. Have a good week, everybody. We'll talk to you on the Monday morning quarterback. Incidentally, we have a Numbers Man program. That is our macroeconomics program that's coming this weekend, and an open source report. So we are busy.